The settlement of Meridian Falls had been beautiful once. Nestled in the valleys of Thornwood Prime, it housed 300 souls who had come seeking peace among the amber forests and crystal streams. The colonists had built their homes from local stone, carved gardens into the hillsides, and lived quietly beneath skies filled with 2 moons. Now those homes were rubble. The gardens burned. The streams ran dark with ash. Seraphine descended through the smoke on wings that spanned 40 meters, each scale shimmering like polished moonstone. She was ancient even by dragon standards, nearly 4 centuries old, and she carried herself with the dignified grace of someone who had seen empires rise and crumble. Her kind did not interfere in the wars of lesser species. They observed, they recorded, but they never took sides. This was the sacred law that had governed dragon society since the first stars ignited. But something had pulled her here. Some instinct she could not name had made her pause during her migration to the ancestral nesting grounds. She had watched from high orbit as the Ravager fleet descended on this small human colony. She had felt each life wink out as the bombardment turned buildings to dust. And she had remained, circling in the upper atmosphere, unable to leave even though every moment of delay put her own future at risk. Now she walked among the ruins on 4 massive legs, her talons careful among the debris. Her species possessed an innate sensitivity to living energy, a sense that allowed them to feel the presence of other beings like warmth against their skin. At this moment, that sense told her almost everything here was dead. Almost. Seraphine froze. There, beneath the collapsed frame of what had once been a dwelling, she detected the faintest flutter of life. So weak it might have been imagination, but it was there. She moved toward it, using her strength to carefully lift away chunks of concrete and twisted metal. The structure groaned as she worked, and she had to proceed slowly to avoid causing further collapse. Finally, she uncovered them. 2 adults, a man and a woman, lay intertwined around something they had protected with their final breaths. Their bodies had taken the crushing weight of the collapse, creating a small pocket of safety beneath them. Seraphine gently moved them aside, honoring their sacrifice with careful reverence, and found what they had died to preserve. A girl. Perhaps 10 years old by human reckoning, with dark hair matted with blood and dust. Her breathing was shallow, each inhale a struggle. One leg was twisted at an angle that made Seraphine wince despite her alien physiology. The child's face was peaceful despite her injuries, as if she trusted that someone would come. The girl's eyes opened, deep brown and unfocused. They found Seraphine's face, took in the enormous scaled head, the silver horns, the eyes that glowed with inner fire. A human should have screamed. Instead, the girl smiled just a little and whispered something too soft to hear before her eyes drifted closed again. Seraphine stood motionless. She could feel the girl's life force weakening with each passing moment. Without medical intervention, she would not survive the night. The nearest human facility capable of treating such injuries was the medical station at Copper Ridge, a full 2 days of flight toward the galactic west. But the nesting grounds lay to the east. 3 days of flight in the opposite direction. And in one of those sacred caves, surrounded by the warmth of volcanic vents, Seraphine's egg was beginning to crack. She had felt it happen an hour ago. The first tremors of movement from within the shell. Every dragon knew what this meant. The hatching was beginning, and it would be complete within 5 days. If a mother was not present when her offspring emerged, the hatchling's neural pathways would form incorrectly. The baby would be born broken, its mind unable to properly integrate sensory information. It would live, but it would never be whole. And dragon society had no place for the imperfect. Seraphine looked down at the dying child. Then she looked toward the eastern sky where her egg waited. 370 years she had lived. She had raised 4 offspring to maturity, seen them take their place among dragonkind. This egg represented her final legacy, her last contribution to her ancient bloodline. The female inside would carry genes that stretched back to the dawn of dragon civilization. To abandon her now would be to sever that chain forever. The girl stirred. Her hand reached out blindly, fingers grasping at nothing, seeking comfort or safety or warmth. The hand found Seraphine's foreclaw and wrapped around it, so small that it could barely encircle a single talon. Through the touch, Seraphine felt everything. The girl's pain, sharp and overwhelming. Her fear, deep and primal. But beneath those things, she felt something else. A spark of determination, of will to survive that burned bright despite the failing body. This child wanted to live. These two adults had given everything they had to grant her that chance. Seraphine closed her eyes. In her mind, she felt the distant presence of her egg, felt the hatchling inside moving more strongly now. She felt the expectations of her species, the weight of centuries of tradition. Dragons did not form attachments to other species. They did not compromise their own offspring for outsiders. They did not break the sacred laws. She opened her eyes and looked at the girl's peaceful, trusting face. Then she carefully lifted the child into her foreclaws, cradling her against the warm scales of her chest. She generated heat from her internal fire, creating a cocoon of warmth around the small broken body. It would keep the girl alive a little longer, though not long enough if she did not receive help soon. Seraphine spread her wings. They caught the smoky air, powerful muscles tensing. For a moment, she remained earthbound, balanced between two futures. Then she launched herself into the sky, turning westward toward Copper Ridge, away from the nesting grounds, away from her egg, away from everything she had been taught was right. As she climbed higher, her communication sense detected a pulse from the east. The other dragons at the nesting grounds were inquiring about her return. They had felt the hatching beginning. They wondered where she was. She did not respond. She could not explain what she was doing because she did not fully understand it herself. The girl stirred against her chest. Through their contact, Seraphine felt a flicker of gratitude from the child's semi-conscious mind. This small human did not know her, had no reason to trust her, and yet she did. She trusted completely, with the uncomplicated faith that only children possessed. Seraphine had never felt anything like this sensation in her chest. Dragons did not bond this way. They mated according to genetic compatibility charts. They raised offspring with patient instruction but little affection. They lived solitary lives between breeding cycles, content in their own company. But holding this fragile child, feeling her small heartbeat against ancient scales, Seraphine suddenly understood something about the younger species. They needed each other in ways dragons did not. They formed connections that defied logic. They made sacrifices that made no sense from a survival perspective. And sometimes, those connections and sacrifices were more important than tradition or law or even survival itself. Another pulse came from the nesting grounds. More urgent now. Her egg was showing stronger movement. The hatching would accelerate. If she turned back immediately, she could still make it. She could still save her own offspring. The girl's hand tightened on her scales. Through the connection all dragons shared with living things, Seraphine felt the child's pain spike as her body struggled against failing organs. Without thinking, Seraphine adjusted her internal heat, sending more warmth through the membrane that surrounded the girl. The pain eased slightly. Such a simple thing. A small adjustment of temperature. But it made the difference between bearable suffering and unbearable agony for this one small being. Seraphine looked back once toward the eastern horizon. Then she increased her speed, pushing herself faster through the atmosphere toward Copper Ridge. She did not look back again. Behind her, in a volcanic cave surrounded by her species, an egg continued to crack. The dragons gathered around it, calling for Seraphine through their shared sense, but she was already too far away to feel their summons. The hatchling inside would soon emerge into a world without its mother. Its mind would form wrong, connections misfiring, senses tangled. The bloodline that had persisted for thousands of years would end in madness. But the girl in Seraphine's arms continued to breathe. Her heart continued to beat. And somehow, in a way the ancient dragon could not explain, that was enough. Stars blurred past as Seraphine pushed herself through the void between planets. She had wrapped the girl more securely against her chest, using a specialized membrane that dragons produced for carrying precious items during long flights. The membrane was warm, flexible, and allowed Seraphine to monitor the child's vital signs through direct contact with her scales. The girl had woken twice during the first day of flight. Each time, her eyes would flutter open, confused and frightened, until she saw Seraphine's face. Then something would shift in her expression, a recognition that transcended species. She would relax, trusting this enormous creature who held her so carefully. During the second waking, the girl had managed to speak a few words. Her name was Olivia. She was 9 years old. She had been helping her mother plant vegetables in their garden when the sky turned dark with ships. Her father had grabbed them both and run for the shelter, but they had not made it in time. Seraphine learned that Olivia's parents had been farmers, part of an agricultural collective trying to develop sustainable food sources for frontier colonies. They had moved to Meridian Falls because it reminded them of Earth, the ancient human homeworld. They had wanted to give Olivia a life close to nature, away from the crowded core systems. When Olivia spoke about her parents, her voice cracked and tears slid down her dirty cheeks. But she did not sob or scream. She grieved quietly, with a dignity that reminded Seraphine of how dragons mourned their own losses. The child was stronger than her small body suggested. On the second day, the messages from the nesting grounds changed in tone. What had been concerned inquiries became statements of fact. Her egg had fully hatched. The hatchling had emerged without its mother present. The baby dragon had been assessed by the nest guardians and found to be severely impaired. Its visual processing centers had developed incorrectly. Its ability to sense other living beings was scrambled and chaotic. It would never fly properly, never hunt, never reproduce. According to the ancient protocols, the hatchling had been granted mercy. They had ended its suffering quickly and without pain. Seraphine felt the news arrive in her consciousness like a physical blow. She nearly faltered in her flight, her wings missing a beat. The membrane around Olivia tightened reflexively, and the girl made a small sound of discomfort. Seraphine immediately loosened her hold, forcing herself to maintain steady flight despite the grief that threatened to overwhelm her. Her daughter was dead. Her final offspring, the last of her bloodline, had lived for less than an hour before being deemed unfit for existence. She had known this would happen. The moment she chose to fly toward Copper Ridge instead of the nesting grounds, she had sealed her hatchling's fate. But knowing something intellectually and experiencing it emotionally were very different things. Olivia stirred against her scales. The girl could not possibly understand what had just happened, could not know the immensity of what Seraphine had sacrificed for her. But somehow, in that mysterious way that living beings sometimes could, Olivia sensed the dragon's distress. A small hand pressed against Seraphine's chest, right above where her massive heart beat steadily. The gesture was meant to comfort, a child's instinctive attempt to soothe someone in pain. Seraphine felt something crack inside her, something that had nothing to do with physical injury. For the first time in 370 years, she wept. Dragons did not cry like humans did, but they could release excess emotional energy through specialized glands near their eyes. Crystalline drops formed and fell, each one catching the starlight as it drifted away into space. Olivia did not say anything. She just kept her hand pressed against Seraphine's scales, offering what comfort she could. They flew on through the darkness. The third message came as they approached Copper Ridge's orbital perimeter. This one was official, transmitted in the formal resonance patterns that signified a judgment from the High Conclave. Seraphine felt it arrive like thunder in her mind, impossible to ignore. She was declared oath-broken. The most severe punishment Dragon Society could impose. Her name would be removed from all genealogical records. Her achievements, her previous offspring, her entire existence would be erased from dragon history. She was forbidden from entering any dragon territory, from speaking to any dragon, from participating in any aspect of her culture. She was, effectively, no longer considered a true dragon. The isolation would be absolute. Dragons were solitary by nature, but they still maintained their cultural connections through the nesting grounds, the ancestral libraries, the great gatherings that occurred once every century. Now all of that was closed to her forever. Olivia had fallen asleep again, her breathing steady and peaceful despite her injuries. Seraphine looked down at the child's face, so small and fragile against her enormous form. This human girl would never fully understand what had been lost for her sake. She would never comprehend the depth of the sacrifice, but looking at Olivia's peaceful expression, feeling the steady beat of her heart, Seraphine realized something profound. She did not regret her choice. The grief was real, the sense of loss devastating, but beneath it all was a strange certainty. She had done the right thing. Not according to dragon law, not according to centuries of tradition, but according to something deeper and more fundamental. She had chosen to preserve life when she could. She had honored the sacrifice of Olivia's parents by ensuring their daughter survived. She had placed compassion above duty, connection above isolation, hope above tradition. Perhaps that made her less of a dragon. But it made her more of something else. Something she did not yet have a name for. Copper Ridge Station appeared ahead, a cluster of modules orbiting a mineral-rich asteroid. It was a modest facility, primarily focused on treating injuries from mining operations. They had never dealt with a dragon before. As Seraphine approached, the station's communication systems activated frantically. Multiple voices overlapped, some panicked, some confused, all uncertain how to respond to a massive dragon requesting docking permission. Finally, one voice cut through the chaos. It belonged to a man who identified himself as Dr. Wesley Grant, the station's chief medical officer. His tone was calm and professional. "This is Copper Ridge Medical. Dragon vessel, please state the nature of your emergency." Seraphine appreciated his composed demeanor. "I am Seraphine of the Western Valleys. I carry a critically injured human child who requires immediate treatment. She has internal bleeding, multiple fractures, and possible organ damage. She will not survive without intervention." There was a brief pause. Then Dr. Grant spoke again, his voice even steadier than before. "Understood. We're opening Bay 7. It's our cargo receiving area, large enough to accommodate your size. Medical team will meet you there." The bay doors opened smoothly, and Seraphine glided inside. Her massive form barely fit through the entrance, her wings folding tight against her body as she touched down on the metal floor. The impact rang through the station like a bell. A dozen humans stood waiting, most of them backing away instinctively as they took in her full size. But Dr. Grant stepped forward without hesitation. He was an older man with silver hair and steady hands, someone who had clearly seen enough emergencies to remain calm under pressure. Behind him, a medical team waited with equipment, their faces showing a mixture of fear and professional determination. Seraphine carefully unwrapped Olivia from the protective membrane, cradling the girl in her foreclaws. She could feel how close to death the child had come. The flight had pushed Olivia's damaged body to its limits. "Her name is Olivia," Seraphine said softly. "She has been unconscious for most of the journey. Her parents died protecting her during the attack on Meridian Falls." Dr. Grant's expression shifted, showing brief sorrow before professional focus returned. He directed his team forward, and they carefully transferred Olivia to a stretcher. As they moved her, the girl's eyes opened one more time. "Seraphine?" Her voice was barely a whisper. "I am here, little one. Don't leave." It was not a question but a simple request from a child who had lost everything. Seraphine looked at Dr. Grant. "I will stay with her. Your corridors are too small for me, but I will find a way." The doctor studied her for a moment, then nodded. "We'll use the maintenance tunnels. They run parallel to the medical wing. You won't fit comfortably, but you'll fit." They moved through the station slowly, the medical team rushing Olivia ahead while Seraphine followed through wider passages designed for moving large equipment. She had to crouch low, her wings pressed so tightly against her body that it was painful, but she managed. The medical bay was bright and clean, filled with equipment that hummed and beeped with purpose. The team worked swiftly, attaching monitors to Olivia, starting fluids through thin tubes into her veins, scanning her injuries with precision instruments. Dr. Grant explained everything he was doing in a quiet, steady voice, speaking not to Seraphine but to Olivia, who drifted in and out of consciousness. Seraphine watched from the doorway, too large to enter the room fully but close enough to see everything. She observed how gently the humans touched Olivia, how carefully they worked to minimize her pain. These were good people, skilled and compassionate. Hours passed. The team stabilized Olivia's internal bleeding, set her broken bones, treated her wounds. As they worked, Dr. Grant spoke to Seraphine occasionally, updating her on the girl's condition. "She's going to make it," he finally said as the sun began to rise over the asteroid's surface. "It was close, closer than I'd like, but she's stable now. She'll need weeks of recovery, but she'll survive." Seraphine felt tension she had not realized she was carrying finally release from her body. "Thank you." Dr. Grant studied her with curious eyes. "What you did, flying all that way with an injured child. That was extraordinary. Especially since I'm guessing you're the dragon everyone's talking about. The one who was declared oath-broken." News traveled fast, apparently. "Yes. I am that dragon. They say you abandoned your own offspring to save her." "That is correct." The doctor was quiet for a moment. Then he said something Seraphine had not expected. "Thank you for choosing her. Thank you for proving that compassion can transcend species." 4 weeks passed in the steady rhythm of healing. Olivia grew stronger each day under the careful attention of Copper Ridge's medical staff and Seraphine's constant presence. The dragon had taken up residence in the station's largest cargo bay, which the staff had converted into makeshift quarters for her. They brought her food, though she needed very little, and showed her how to access the station's information networks. Seraphine learned more about humans during those weeks than she had in her entire previous existence. She discovered that they were far more complex than dragon society had given them credit for. They created art that moved her in unexpected ways. They formed deep friendships that lasted lifetimes. They loved fiercely and grieved deeply. They were, in many ways, more emotionally rich than her own species. Olivia's room was adjacent to Seraphine's bay, connected by a large window that the staff had installed so they could see each other at all times. The girl would press her hand against the glass, and Seraphine would touch her claw to the same spot from the other side. It became their ritual, a silent affirmation of the bond that had formed between them. The child talked constantly when she was awake. She told stories about her life before the attack, about her parents and their dreams for the future. She asked questions about dragons, about space, about everything she could think of. Seraphine answered patiently, finding that she enjoyed these conversations more than she had enjoyed anything in decades. But beneath the routine of recovery, danger was approaching. The warning came from an unexpected source. A trader vessel docked at Copper Ridge for supplies, and its captain brought news that made Dr. Grant's face go pale. The Ravager Collective, the same force that had destroyed Meridian Falls, had sent an envoy to the region. They were searching for something specific, a human child who had survived their attack, and the dragon who had saved her. Dr. Grant called an emergency meeting in the station's command center. Seraphine attended via video link, her massive face filling the screen as station personnel gathered around the table. "The collective is obsessed with what happened," Dr. Grant explained. "A dragon forming a protective bond with a human child, sacrificing everything for her. They've never seen anything like it. They want to study it, understand it, weaponize it." Seraphine felt her internal fire flare with anger, heat rippling across her scales. "They want to experiment on her. On both of you," added Commander Felix Torres, the station's security chief. He was a compact man with military bearing and worried eyes. "They believe they can reverse engineer emotional bonding between species. Imagine if they could force loyalty between different species, control entire populations through artificially created attachments. That's monstrous, someone said. That's the collective, Torres replied grimly. They don't see individuals. They see resources and tools. A child who can bond with a dragon who defies her own species for that child. To them, you're both just fascinating specimens. Through the window, Seraphine could see Olivia in her room, playing with a puzzle one of the nurses had given her. The girl was laughing at something, her face bright with the simple joy of being alive. She had no idea that she was being hunted. When will they arrive? Seraphine asked. The envoy ship is 3 days out, Torres said. They've sent a formal request for us to surrender both of you into their custody. They're claiming it's for scientific research that will benefit all species. And if we refuse? Torres met her eyes through the screen. They'll take you by force. Copper Ridge is a medical station, not a fortress. We have basic defensive systems, but nothing that could stop a collective warship. If they decide to attack, we'll last maybe an hour. Silence fell over the room. Seraphine could feel the fear radiating from the humans, could sense their desperation to find a solution that would not result in their deaths. I will leave, Seraphine said quietly. I will take Olivia and go somewhere beyond their reach. You have done more than enough for us. I will not let you die for my choices. Dr. Grant shook his head. She's not ready for long-distance travel. Her injuries have healed well, but her body is still fragile. The stress of flight could cause complications. Then I will leave alone. They want me more than they want her. If I depart, perhaps they will lose interest in Copper Ridge. You know that's not true, Torres said bluntly. They want both of you. The bond is what fascinates them. Separating you just gives them 2 targets instead of 1. Seraphine felt trapped in a way she had never experienced before. For centuries, she had been able to simply fly away from problems. Dragons were powerful enough that few beings challenged them, and mobile enough to avoid those who did. But now she had responsibilities that prevented flight. She had Olivia to protect, and these humans who had helped them both. There might be another option, said a new voice. Everyone turned to look at the speaker. She was young, maybe 25 in human years, with dark skin and bright intelligent eyes. Her uniform identified her as Technician Amara Okoye, one of the station's engineers. The collective wants to understand the bond between them, Amara continued. They want to study how a dragon and a human form this connection. But what if we could prove that the bond isn't unique? What if we could show them that this kind of cross-species empathy is already widespread, already understood, and therefore not worth pursuing? Torres frowned. How would we prove something like that? Amara's smile was sharp and clever. We lie. We fabricate research data showing that emotional bonding between different species is common and well documented. We create false records of dozens of similar cases. We make it seem like the collective is chasing something that's already public knowledge. Dr. Grant looked intrigued. Would they believe it? They might, if we're convincing enough. The collective is arrogant, but they're not stupid. If they think the information they're seeking is already available, they might lose interest in capturing living specimens. It's risky, Torres said. If they discover the deception, they'll be even more determined. Everything is risky at this point, Amara replied. But at least this gives us a chance without anyone dying. Seraphine considered the proposal. It was clever, though it relied heavily on the collective being reasonable enough to accept new information. That was not guaranteed. But it was better than the alternatives. How long would you need to create this false evidence? Seraphine asked. 2 days, maybe less. I'll need help from the medical and research teams to make it convincing. Dr. Grant nodded slowly. Do it. Everyone who can assist, report to Amara. We'll create the most compelling fake research data the galaxy has ever seen. The next 2 days were a flurry of activity. Amara and her team worked around the clock, creating false research papers, fabricating experimental data, and even producing fake video recordings of other species forming emotional bonds. They made it look like cross-species empathy had been studied for decades by multiple institutions across dozens of worlds. Meanwhile, Olivia continued to recover, unaware of the danger approaching. Seraphine spent every moment she could near the girl's window, watching over her. At night, when Olivia slept, Seraphine would hum ancient dragon songs, melodies that had been sung by her species since before humans had developed space flight. The night before the collective's arrival, Olivia pressed her hand against the window as usual. But this time, she spoke words that made Seraphine's ancient heart ache. "You're my family now, aren't you? Since my parents are gone, you're all I have." Seraphine touched her claw to the glass across from Olivia's small hand. "Yes, little one. I am your family. And you are mine. Will you always stay with me?" It was a question Seraphine could not answer with certainty. She did not know what the future held, did not know if Amara's plan would work or if the collective would take them both regardless. But she knew what Olivia needed to hear, and more importantly, she knew it was true. "Always," Seraphine promised. "No matter what comes, I will not leave you." Olivia smiled, that beautiful uncomplicated smile that only children could manage. "Good. Because I love you." Dragons did not have a word for love in their language. They had terms for genetic compatibility, for breeding success, for offspring investment. But not for this feeling, this overwhelming need to protect and cherish someone who shared no blood with you. But Seraphine understood it anyway. "I love you too, Olivia." The next morning, the collective envoy ship arrived. It was sleek and dangerous, bristling with weapons and scanning equipment. Commander Torres opened communications, and the face that appeared on the screen was reptilian and cold, with eyes that saw everything as potential resources. "This is Envoy Kresh of the Ravager Collective. We are here to claim custody of the human child designated Olivia and the rogue dragon designated Seraphine. Please prepare them for immediate transfer." Torres kept his voice steady. "We have new information that may interest you, Envoy. Information that suggests your pursuit of these individuals may be unnecessary." Kresh's expression did not change. "Explain." Amara stepped forward, a data chip in her hand. "We've compiled extensive research showing that emotional bonding between different species is far more common than previously believed. Cross-species empathy has been documented in hundreds of cases across multiple worlds. The bond between Seraphine and Olivia, while touching, is not unique or particularly useful for research purposes." She held up the chip. "All our findings are here. Publications, experimental data, case studies. The phenomenon you're interested in has already been thoroughly studied by the scientific community." Kresh was silent for a long moment. Then he spoke words that made everyone's blood run cold. "We know you are lying. We have monitored your communications for the past 2 days. We know you fabricated this evidence. And now, in addition to the dragon and the child, we will be taking your entire station into custody for obstruction and fraud." The screen went dark. Alarms began blaring throughout Copper Ridge as the collective ship powered up its weapons. They had minutes, perhaps less, before the attack began. Seraphine made her decision in an instant. She smashed through the window separating her bay from Olivia's room, ignoring the explosive decompression warnings. She grabbed the girl in her claws, wrapping her in the protective membrane even as station personnel scrambled to seal the breaches. "I am sorry," she said to Dr. Grant through the chaos. "I am so sorry." The doctor's face was pale but determined. "Go. Get her out of here. We'll handle the collective. They will destroy the station. Maybe. But maybe we'll surprise them. Now go before it's too late." Seraphine spread her wings and launched herself toward the emergency airlock, Olivia clutched safely against her chest. Behind her, she heard the sounds of weapons charging, of brave humans preparing to fight a battle they could not win. And for the second time in her long life, Seraphine flew away from everything she knew, carrying a small human child toward an uncertain future. But this time, she was not running from her choices. She was running toward something new. Something that terrified and thrilled her in equal measure. She was running toward a future where love mattered more than law, where family was defined by choice rather than blood, where an ancient dragon and a human child could become something greater together than either could be alone. Behind them, Copper Ridge Station lit up with weapons fire as the humans fought to buy them time. Ahead, the stars waited, infinite and full of possibility. I love you too, Olivia. The next morning, the collective envoy ship arrived. It was sleek and dangerous, bristling with weapons and scanning equipment. Commander Torres opened communications, and the face that appeared on the screen was reptilian and cold, with eyes that saw everything as potential resources. This is Envoy Kresh of the Ravager Collective. We are here to claim custody of the human child designated Olivia and the rogue dragon designated Seraphine. Please prepare them for immediate transfer. Torres kept his voice steady. We have new information that may interest you, Envoy. Information that suggests your pursuit of these individuals may be unnecessary. Kresh's expression did not change. Explain. Amara stepped forward, a data chip in her hand. We've compiled extensive research showing that emotional bonding between different species is far more common than previously believed. Cross-species empathy has been documented in hundreds of cases across multiple worlds. The bond between Seraphine and Olivia, while touching, is not unique or particularly useful for research purposes. She held up the chip. All our findings are here. Publications, experimental data, case studies. The phenomenon you're interested in has already been thoroughly studied by the scientific community. Kresh was silent for a long moment. Then he spoke words that made everyone's blood run cold. We know you are lying. We have monitored your communications for the past 2 days. We know you fabricated this evidence. And now, in addition to the dragon and the child, we will be taking your entire station into custody for obstruction and fraud. The screen went dark. Alarms began blaring throughout Copper Ridge as the collective ship powered up its weapons. They had minutes, perhaps less, before the attack began. Seraphine made her decision in an instant. She smashed through the window separating her bay from Olivia's room, ignoring the explosive decompression warnings. She grabbed the girl in her claws, wrapping her in the protective membrane even as station personnel scrambled to seal the breaches. I am sorry, she said to Dr. Grant through the chaos. I am so sorry. The doctor's face was pale but determined. Go. Get her out of here. We'll handle the collective. They will destroy the station. Maybe. But maybe we'll surprise them. Now go before it's too late. Seraphine spread her wings and launched herself toward the emergency airlock, Olivia clutched safely against her chest. Behind her, she heard the sounds of weapons charging, of brave humans preparing to fight a battle they could not win. And for the second time in her long life, Seraphine flew away from everything she knew, carrying a small human child toward an uncertain future. But this time, she was not running from her choices. She was running toward something new. Something that terrified and thrilled her in equal measure. She was running toward a future where love mattered more than law, where family was defined by choice rather than blood, where an ancient dragon and a human child could become something greater together than either could be alone. Behind them, Copper Ridge Station lit up with weapons fire as the humans fought to buy them time. Ahead, the stars waited, infinite and full of possibility.